Hey everybody, how you doing today? Manitoba Hal here. Today we're going to do a little video about how to restring your ukulele. Now, probably if you're like me, you've got one of these fancy ukes with the tie downs, and they're always a problem when you first start out. So I wanted to give you some help with that. We're going to use Gig and Jig Ukulele Strings, which come to us from the South Shore of Nova Scotia. There's a link in the comments below, so please take a chance to look them up. We're going to need a tuner, some cutters. You can use scissors as well for these are nylon strings. I have these from years and years, so I use them. And a peg winder. Now you don't need a peg winder, but it makes it a whole lot easier to wind up the strings to tension. So let's get down to it, shall we? Now the first step in restringing your ukulele is to take the old strings off. So what I like to do is loosen off all the tension. And that's where the peg winder comes in. It makes it a lot faster to just wind these back like this till your string becomes really loose. And when it gets loose enough, you'll see that it starts to come loose on the peg, and you can literally pull it off like that. And that's what I like to do so that it's easy to work with. Not quite enough there. Oops. The next part is to untie the strings from the back here. Now, they're just looped around, so you can literally just with your nail get in there. I'll probably block that with my hand, and just pull that up so that it comes right out, just like that. So you'll see, just kind of dig in there with your nails. You can use a nail file or something small, but you might risk scratching your bridge is the word I'm looking for. It gets a little harder with a thicker string, but it does come out just that easy. Now, when you're all restrung or taking the strings off, I tend to just dust up and get rid of all the crap in my ukulele, because under the strings you can't clean it up normally. Just a quick word on strings. I find that they're a pretty subjective thing. So you want to try out a few different brands to see what you like. Some like the clear fluorocarbons, such as these Gig and Jig strings. Some like the Aquila Nile gut strings. I think it comes down to personal preference of tension and the tone on your instrument. There are people who try to tell you which is better for certain woods. I don't know that that's true or false. I'm not going to sit there and dispute, but my experience is that an awful lot of tone comes from your hand on the instrument, not the string that you use to play it. Now, in my particular case, I'm going to use the tenor low G strings because that's what I use, but you also can get a concert tenor set with a high G. These are the same strings except the high G instead of the low G, and that's a matter of personal preference again as well. Now the folks at Gig and Jig have labeled each package with a colored star so that you can tell which string is which. And on the back of their package they've identified which string goes in which position based upon that color. The biggest trick to tying these on is planning ahead. Now, what I mean by that is you know you're going to have little pieces of string coming back out the back of your bridge slots. So if you take the string and you push it through the hole, thinking a little bit about how it's going to flex will help you a lot. So in this case, you want to do a sort of a knot like you're tying shoes, and you push it through. Now what I've done is I've crossed over on the inside, so you can see here that the loose end of the string is coming underneath and to the sound hole side of the other string. Now I want to do that because what I want is for this to fall through on that side, and I'm going to do a couple of different passes. So I want to get at least 2 passes on that, and it leaves a little tang there at the end that sticks out. And you'll see that it sits just a little bit out like that. Now I want that because what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it underneath the next string as I come along, and that'll help me keep it neat. At this point I come up to my tuner and my headstock to wind it up here. And what I do is, this is my policy, I just take the string, pull it as tight as I can pull it, and I wind it around 2 or 3 times. Now one of the things that you want to make sure of is that your winds are climbing on top of each other in as neat a fashion as you can. And then you slip this through the hole and pull it tight. Now what that does, if you can see here, is it creates a nice, where are we? It creates a nice even tension, and the string winds from the bottom up. That'll help me with tuning stability as I get it tighter. And then I just take my, my peg winder and I start winding up the tension. Now what you want to see when you're done, and this is by no means at full tension, but what you want to see when you're done is that nice neat winding like that. And then when we're all done, we'll trim these ends of extra ends of strings off. Okay, here we are. Now here's that trick that I mentioned about keeping it neater. What we're going to do is we're going to slip this through the back like we did on the other one, but we've got our little extra piece here. And you can see that what I want to do is make sure that this new string, or that the old string, pardon me, the low G that I put on here, slips underneath this new string, or on top of, pardon me, not underneath. So let me get my thumb in there, just like this, so that it sits inside the new pack loop we're going to make. See how that works there? With the C string there coming underneath the other string. And then I just tie the loop just like I did before, where I bring the string on the inside and I wrap it around 2 or 3 times depending on your preference. I find that most of the time 2 is enough if you've pulled it tight enough, but you might find you prefer more. Now it doesn't really matter how much you leave, but the more you leave, the more you have to tie up, and it gets a little challenging. And we come all the way up to our headstock here. We do the same thing. Now, I left maybe a little too much there, and I don't have as much left on the end, but I have plenty. So a couple of winds around, through the hole, pulled tight, and then tighten it up. Now when I'm winding the strings up as I'm stringing, I'm not trying to achieve full tune on them. We know that they're going to stretch like crazy. I'm just trying to get them tight enough that they're not going to slip any further, and that way it works. It'll help us a little bit later. Here's that restringing procedure yet again from another angle as he unwinds this other string. Now I'll tell you a little bit about Gig and Jig Strings. These are produced by Nigel Dion, who some of you folks know on YouTube as RJ Culp. He has a few YouTube videos out there and has been a part of the ukulele community for a number of years. He's now producing these out of his home in Sandy Point, Nova Scotia, which is actually very close to where I live. So here we are. We've got our string coming through there again. We take the previous one, we put it over top so that we get a little bit of, we use the wind of this to hold it tight. We bring this one over, and again, on the far side, the inside of our thing, wind 2 different times, and pull tight. And here's our last one. slip our string through, and we want to make sure these two ends are wound on top, and that will allow us to do it. So again, we slipped underneath, we come around, we come through twice, and then we pull tight. And that means that we only have the one left hanging out, and the rest are all tucked in nice and neat. So now we come to the part where we trim off the extra ends, and you know, you can use whatever you want. I use wire cutters because I have them. I leave about 1 centimeter of string in case I need to grab a hold of anything. You can choose exactly how much you want to leave or not. But it's just about neatening up the headstock more than anything else. Some people like to wind the ends. I find that that's just gets in the way, and the only time I ever do that is when I change them in a hurry before a show. So you see that all of my winds are nice and tight and neat, and that I'm ready to bring this up to full tension. So when you're bringing it up to tension, this is usually what when I add the tuner. You can get all kinds of vibration sensing mounting tuners. This is an IntelliTouch, but there are a whole bunch of them. What you use is not as important as that you like it and it's within your budget. At this point I take the peg winder because I know I'm going to have to wind a lot. I'm bringing this all the way up to G. So there I am, F and F sharp. And I'm almost at G. Now I don't expect that to stay there. In fact, by the time I'm done the other strings, I'm sure it will be different. So then I move on to the next string, and I bring it up to C. So there, my G has already fallen to F sharp, by the way. So now I'll just bring it back up to G. Now, and my C has slipped back to almost to B. So there we are. Move on to our E string, and I do the same thing. Start winding until it reaches E. There we are, and then our A string. And we're at E, so we got to keep coming. This one takes a lot because, of course, we started pretty low with it. Now, here I am at A, and I start the process all over again. Bring that back up to G from F sharp. Bring this one up to C from B. At this point, I'm not particularly concerned about accuracy on that note because I know it's going to stretch back, so I just bring it up to where it's going to be. One little trick that I use to speed the settling of these strings on is I place my left hand on the fingerboard, and I do this so that I'm minimizing the tension on the tuners, and I pick the string up in the middle and I pull, and this is stretching that string just a little bit. Now you don't want to pull too hard because you could break the string or you could pull it out of its slot. But what that does, of course, is it stretches it so that G, for example, is now down a whole step to F again. So I bring it back up. C, I bring it back up. E is down to D. I bring it back up. A has fallen to G sharp. We're close. And then I just keep repeating this until it stays. Now, one thing about ukulele strings that if you don't know by now you're going to figure out, and that is that they stretch for quite a while. So even doing this pulling on thing, it'll get me in tune fairly stably soon, but it won't be a permanent thing. It will continue to stretch. And what I'll need to do in order to maintain the tune is every time I pick my uke up, I'll have to tune these strings for the next little while, because that's what they do. They're going to stretch, they're going to stretch, and then I'm going to have to bring them back up to pitch. So there we have it, retuning your ukulele in a few easy steps with a little extra work, and it holds on. And here's a little song for you.